Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 313 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the 4 best things I did for my career that you can do too. And I'll get more into this as we go. What I'm not suggesting here is you just do everything I did, but I think there's some good pieces of advice that I can pull out of my experiences that you can maybe replicate for yourself. So let's get into this episode right now. So as I look back over my career, obviously I went into management and leadership roles, and then I transitioned into leadership coaching and training, which is what I do now with Thoughtful Leader. But along the way, there were a bunch of pivotal things I realized that happened that actually helped me get to where I am now, and I think were quite beneficial in helping me get there. And in particular, the first one I want to mention here is mindfulness. Now, I'm not someone who goes on mindfulness retreats and meditation retreats and silent retreats and all those things. I don't actually do that stuff. I actually just do mindfulness meditation every morning for 10 minutes. So 10 minutes a day, I just do some mindfulness practice. Now, the reason this came up was I remember back in around about 2015-ish, so I've been doing it for about 10 or 11 years now. Came up, I was in a project management role, and what I realized was I was getting frustrated at work quite a lot. So, things weren't going well. It was a stressful environment. Some of my senior stakeholders weren't playing ball with the project, and I ended up just getting really frustrated. And occasionally I would sort of act in ways that I didn't like. So I'm not a fiery personality, but I remember occasionally snapping at someone or getting openly frustrated with a senior leader or something like that, which wasn't a great thing to be doing. And I thought, well, I've got to get better at this. So what I'm really talking about there is the self-management part of emotional intelligence, really trying to manage my emotions better. So someone suggested to me mindfulness practice. And it started off very simply. Like they gave me 3 exercises, I think. And on the train on the way to work, I'd have my headphones on and I would sit and do these little simple exercises. And these would be, something like, okay, sit and feel the seat against your legs, or feel the back of the chair against your back, or just sense your feet inside your shoes. All these sort of things, right? They're simple things to get you thinking about how your body is feeling in different situations and sort of get you into the present moment rather than thinking about the future or the past or worrying about something. And over time, I would say these sort of exercises initially had no effect. It's not a short-term thing. So over time, I ended up looking into more of this stuff, and I looked into the Headspace app, which you might have heard of, which is one which has meditations and things in it, which is a good one. And now I actually use the Waking Up app, which is by a person called Sam Harris, who's a neuroscientist and philosopher in the US, and I really like his stuff. So I use the Waking Up app as well now. And what I noticed over time was, I would say I noticed a difference after about 3 to 6 months onward. What I noticed was I started to become more aware of when I was stressed in meetings, for example. I would notice my shoulders sort of rising a little bit, getting tense. And what that would help me to do was to think, oh, hold on a minute, I'm getting stressed here. What is it that's making me stressed? And I would actually be able to physically, intentionally relax my shoulders and sort of start to reverse that process of being stressed. And also, it helped me look out for the triggers of that stressful event. So that was really useful. And over time, I've just become far more sensitive to my emotions and my mental state, my mood, and how I'm behaving or responding to things. So I've been doing mindfulness stuff, 10 minutes a day for about 10 years. And so as I said, I'm not doing, going on 7-day retreats and all that sort of stuff. But over time, all that effort adds up. And if you consider yourself someone to be someone who's, oh, my brain is too active for meditation, I can't do it. Well, I've got news for you. That's sort of everyone. Everyone's pretty much like that. And one way that was really helpful that someone explained it to me once was that when you're in the gym, for example, you're lifting weights. You lift the weight once and you put it down. That's one rep. That's one repetition. And then you do a bunch of repetitions and you make up a set. Right. So when you're in some sort of meditation and you get distracted and you start thinking about what's for lunch or I'm worrying about something at work, then when you notice that and pull yourself back into the present moment, that is the rep. That's like doing weights at the gym. When you pull yourself back from being distracted and notice you were distracted, that's the exercise. And that's where you're getting the benefit. So the benefit is not sitting in 10 minutes of peaceful bliss. The benefit is actually the repetition you're getting from consistently bringing yourself back from being distracted. So over time, I would say mindfulness is one of the biggest things and best things I've done for my career, but my life in general as well. Because the quality of your relationships and the way you deal with people improves as well, just overall. Because, imagine it, right? If you are more mindful of your emotions, you can emotionally regulate better, you're more aware of what's going on around you, you're going to interact better with people. And that will make them better as well. And so you're actually improving yourself to improve your relationships with others as well. So that's my number one. That's the mindfulness. Now, the second one that is really pivotal, and I've talked about it before, is when I enrolled at a Toastmasters club to improve my public speaking skills. So Toastmasters is a public speaking organization. If you look up, I think it's toastmasters.org, or Toastmasters International, you just Google them, you will see their website, and there are clubs all over the world, hundreds, thousands of clubs to join. The thing I love about Toastmasters is it's quite a supportive environment. Everyone's there to get better at public speaking. So if you're not great at public speaking, well, that's fine. No one's going to criticize you for that. It's a place where you can practice and try things and get better and better. Now, the reason I joined Toastmasters was I just started consulting and I realized I'm going to have to give presentations and I'm going to have to present to senior executives and all those things. And so I thought, well, I'm very scared of public speaking right now and I avoid it like the plague. So I better do something about this. And that's when I decided, or I found out about Toastmasters somehow. I think I just researched it online at the time and found there was a club near me that met early in the morning. So they started the meetings at 6:45 a.m. So it was good because you could get it out of the way before work. And there was no better feeling than doing a speech at Toastmasters, feeling nervous about it beforehand, but then finishing it and completing it and going to work and feeling like you've done something good already in the day. So that was really good. I went to Toastmasters for 2 years. And after that point, I decided to quit Toastmasters because I no longer felt worried about public speaking. I felt confident enough to go and speak in front of people and not be stressed about it. And that was my goal. Since then, 10 years later, I've actually joined the same club again because I just wanted to tune up my skills, even though I do quite a lot of public speaking now. As part of my training work and workshop delivery, I just wanted to tune up and get back in touch with people from that club. So I did that, and now I'm still a member of Toastmasters in Perth, Western Australia as well. So Toastmasters, improving my public speaking skills, was an awesome one, right? Now, the third thing I'm going to point out here, another thing that happened for my career, which is really pivotal, is I listened to influential mentors that I had. Now, you might be thinking, well, I don't really have a mentor. Well, actually, I didn't either. I didn't really have a formal mentor that I met with every month or anything like that. But what I'm calling mentors here are just people that I respected who gave me nice pieces of advice that actually really helped me at the time. And I took those pieces of advice and actually followed them. And there's two people that stick out for me from memory at the moment. First one is a professor from the University of Western Australia who's retired now, called Michael Guppy. And he was my advisor. I was doing biochemistry at the time. And I wasn't very good at biochemistry. And a series of events had led me into that course in the end. And I was in my third year of biochemistry. And I was getting, 60% grades. I was quite an average sort of student. And He was my third year project advisor. And he picked up on this and he said, look, what do you enjoy doing? And I said, well, I really like computers and maths and that sort of stuff, actually. And I'm quite good at that stuff. And he said, oh, why don't you just go back and do a computer science degree at university? And at the time, that seemed like a huge deal. I mean, I was, 20 years old, which is very young, obviously. And looking back now, I know that you have all the time in the world at that age to really find out what you want to do. But at the time, I thought, oh, that's a big deal. If I was going to go back to university and study something else, that would be another 3 years and I wouldn't be working and all those things. And he actually helped me realize that it's actually not a big deal to go back and try something else and change course. You don't have to just stick on the course that you're in. And I actually followed that advice and ended up re-enrolling in a unit of computer science as part of that third year of my biochemistry study. And it was actually, I turned out to be excellent at computer science. I ended up getting super high grades. I was in the 80s and 90s and I really loved it. So I worked hard. I ended up joining classes late because I'd missed the enrollment. And I joined the classes maybe 6 weeks late and just caught up and did all this study in my free time to catch up with the progress of the course. And I ended up getting really good results. I ended up getting some prizes in a few units as well for getting the best marks, and ended up moving into an IT career, which is where I started. Now, without listening to him, I would have probably stuck as a biochemistry student and I would have been quite a bad one. And I, would have just continued in that vein. And I'm not sure what would have happened, but I probably would have been quite a mediocre student and a mediocre worker. And I'm not sure I would have progressed much in that field because I wasn't that talented at it either. So it's interesting to see what might have happened, but that was a really pivotal one to change and realize, hey, it's not that big of a deal to switch. Another mentor that I had was a guy called Gaj Varma. Now, he's a former boss of mine. A bit of a shout out to Gaj if he listens to this podcast. Now, he was a former boss of mine. I was a software developer. And he sort of realized, he saw something in me that made him realize or know that I wanted to do something more than just write code and that sort of stuff. And he suggested, he goes, look, you don't want to do these sort of jobs, for your whole career. I can tell you want to do something else. And he suggested I do my MBA, a Master's in Business Administration at university. And I didn't really know much about MBAs. And I ended up taking on that advice and actually going to start my MBA. And I did that over 3 years in the end, part-time. So I was doing part-time MBA. I was working during the day, studying at night. And I ended up finishing that in 3 years part-time. And the reason the MBA was good is not because it's an MBA, right? People go, a saying I heard once is, the only people who care about if you've got an MBA are people that have an MBA, right? So I wouldn't say it's this magical thing that everyone should get an MBA. And surprisingly, it didn't actually teach me much about leadership, I'll be honest with you. Most of the benefit of the MBA for me was building the foundational knowledge that I just didn't have because I started off in technical IT roles. So for example, I didn't know much about accounting, marketing, business, economics. I actually didn't know much about that stuff at all. And so doing the MBA filled in heaps of these gaps, which made me a much better, more well-rounded person in terms of being a manager because I had this extra knowledge. And I was never going to be an accountant or a financial advisor or anything like that. But it meant when people were talking about certain topics in that space, I understood enough of what they were talking about to be able to have a credible conversation with them. It made me more well-rounded as a manager, and I thought that was a really useful thing to do. The second thing the MBA did was I was actually in consulting for part of the MBA. So I was working quite long hours on stressful projects and studying at the same time. And what it made me realize was if you develop healthy habits, like good habits about workload and how you manage your work and when you do your work, you can actually get a lot done and accomplish way more than you thought you could. So for example, I would get up early in the morning at about 5:30 and I would study for an hour before I went to work. Now, that was amazing because what it meant was I'd already got my study done before work happened. And in consulting, you often have to work late. So I was never going to get it done after work because I'd be work too late sometimes. So actually getting the discipline to get up early and do that study made me feel good because I'd already accomplished that. No matter what happened throughout the day, I'd ticked off that study, so I didn't have to worry about it. So building those healthy work habits, and it made me realize that it probably challenged me more than most things that I've had in my career, the MBA, which was juggling that and working full-time in a hard job at the same time. And what it made me realize was, hey, you've actually got quite a lot of time in the day. It's just about how you use it and where you put your focus. And I'm not saying we should all be working 24 hours a day or anything like that, but it did make me realize that you can really accomplish some great things if you are focused and actually prioritize your time quite well. And that was one of the benefits. And a side benefit was I spent so much time studying as part of the MBA in my spare time that when the MBA finished, I had this amazing amount of free time available. It felt like, wow, I've just got all this free time. And that's actually how Thoughtful Leader started, because I felt like I had time to do something else and I wanted to do something significant. And so I started writing about leadership. And the time that I used to spend studying was now time I spent on Thoughtful Leader and different things like that. And actually, that's what built up that habit of doing something in my spare time that led to something bigger over time. So Thoughtful Leader has been around for about 11 years in total now. And that started because I realized that if I prioritize my time, I can do that and I can write articles and do podcasts and all that stuff if you focus your effort in the right areas and the time in the right areas. Now, just going back to the Toastmasters quickly, I just want to pull out some of the learnings from that for me. Toastmasters for me, public speaking was a huge weakness of mine at the time. I was super scared of it. I was really worried about public speaking. I had a few really bad examples or incidents in public speaking early on at university when a lecturer criticized me about it. And I vowed that I would never do it again, right? Oh, no, I'm just going to avoid public speaking. So what that was doing, the Toastmasters for me, it gave me confidence because what I was doing was I was reducing my weaknesses. I was solving some of these weaknesses I had and turning them into more of a strength or something I wasn't worried about anymore and I could do. It made it a skill of mine, public speaking. And the reason this was so important, and I think it's a good lesson for you listening, is it meant that I could take on opportunities. Like if someone said to me, I want you to run this project or I want you to give this presentation, or, someone, a client of mine when I was consulting actually asked me to be a guest lecturer on project governance years ago. And I said, yeah, I can do that. And I was stressed about it, but I did it. I only had one day to prepare to be a guest lecturer for that topic, but I ended up delivering a guest lecture on project governance, all because I wasn't scared of public speaking anymore. So when you reduce some of your weaknesses and the things you're most worried about and scared about, you end up being able to take on opportunities. And that means that you can be much more flexible and versatile. And when things come up, you can say yes to them without fear. And I think that was really important for that. And going back to the mindfulness just quickly to pull out some benefits of that one. The main thing there is I'm actually of the opinion now that we should work more on ourselves than worrying too much about what's going on outside us. Now, the reason I think that is, when you turn up to work every day, there's a million things that could happen to you. Staff member's off sick. A staff member could get angry and swear at you. Your boss could call you an idiot. And there's three, right? There's three things. There's many, many more things that could happen. Now, you cannot prepare for all those things that could happen in the outside world. There's too many of them. So what I think the best approach is to prepare yourself so that you have a great foundation so that you can handle whatever is thrown at you. And mindfulness is one example of improving yourself and your ability to stay present and your ability to focus and not be distracted and to pay attention to things and be observant. You're developing all those skills so that you can respond to whatever happens to you because you're not going to be able to prepare for all those things. And this is similar to the personal values I talk about when we talk about understanding our personal values. That is, once again, a foundational piece of information that you can use to respond to the world around you. And therefore, I think we need to build ourselves up and to work on ourselves so that we can respond to any challenge. And that's how I approach a lot of my sort of leadership coaching and training now, is to understand more about yourself and improve yourself, because then you'll be able to handle whatever comes, because you can never prepare for everything that's coming because there's too many things that could happen. So those are my 4 examples, and a bit of a longer episode today, I must say. But hopefully you found that useful, and just pick out a couple of things from there and go, you know what, in my career, that might mean this. So I'm not saying you should all run out and do mindfulness or public speaking, all that stuff. I mean, those things are all very good and I do recommend them. But see if you can translate what I've said here into your own experience. What are these things telling you maybe you should be doing to reduce some of your weaknesses or be able to take on opportunities more confidently and that sort of stuff? So I'm interested in your thoughts on this one. Go to the show notes page, thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/313, and let me know, did any of this stand out for you? What did you think? And yeah, let me know anything that you think you took out of it and translated it into your own experience. And as usual, if you like this podcast, I would love it and appreciate it if you could give it a 5-star review on your podcast app of choice. It helps me get the word out about Thoughtful Leader and attract more leaders to this podcast. So thank you once again. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Keep up the thoughtful leadership as usual, and I'll be back next week.